Is 10:30, so good morning to everyone, and welcome to the Lancaster County Board of Commissioners meeting. And we appreciate your attendance. And for the viewers who are tuning in, we thank you so much for doing so. For introductions, on my left is Commissioner Deb Shore, and you had an announcement you wanted to make?
I just wanted to make the board aware that I will be departing approximately 11:45. There is a luncheon that Public Safety Director Cassidy is speaking at, recognizing the members of the Public Safety Finance Committee. So
Okay, and you were on that board.
I will be departing early.
Okay, and then Todd Wilchin, Commissioner Todd Wilchin. And on my right is Vice Chair and Commissioner Larry Hudkins and Commissioner Bill Avery. I am Commissioner Roma Amundson, Chair of the Board. So welcome, and will you all join now in saying the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and thank you so very much. And Mr. Clerk, will you begin the agenda, please?
A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is located on the wall at the rear of the hearing room. Additionally, a copy of all written material to be discussed at today's open meeting is available from the county clerk's staff. The material can also be viewed on the county's website at lancaster.ne.gov. Agenda item 1 are minutes. Approve the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held on Tuesday, March 31st, 2015.
I move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting. Are there any corrections or additions? If not, please call the roll.
Avery,
Yes.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 2 are claims. Approval of all claims processed through April 7th, 2015.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the claims. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Next is number 3, public hearings. Class 1 liquor license for Engine House Cafe on the Lake, LLC, doing business as Boathouse Bar and Grill at 10,005 West Avery Road, Raymond, Nebraska.
Okay, we will open the public hearing for the Class 1 liquor license for Engine House Cafe. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Okay, please come forward. And as you come forward, please state your name for the record, and then there'll be an oath of that you will take.
My name is Roger Pletcher.
And would you sign in, please?
Then I will need to swear you in if you want to raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, Roger?
Okay.
What would you like to say?
Oh, just that I'm opening up a second location at the Branch Oak Lake Marina. I know it's been through several different hands at this time. I'm going to open Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Saturday and Sunday, we hope to serve breakfast out there at 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And then, close Monday and Tuesdays. And then, of course, we just run the season from May 1st until October 31st, give or take. And we hope, go ahead.
Oh, just, if you would share a little bit about your background in the
Okay.
restaurant industry.
Well, I don't know if you know Engine House Cafe, by the way, best breakfast in Lincoln, 2 years in a row now. And thanks for that. Shameless plug. I've had tons of restaurant experience. I worked as a server, bartender, back since I was 20 years old. So at least 30 years of restaurant experience. Was a manager at Applebee's for 6 years. At that time, I was a bar manager, so I've had a lot of experience as a bar manager. 3 years at Cracker Barrel, and I've owned the Engine House almost 6 years now.
And I've eaten at your place.
Yes.
Well, I'm a local farmer in the area, and so we're sure hoping that you can make her going with your good food. Senator Carroll and I were 2 Saturdays ago out at Havelock for breakfast, And we stood outside for probably 20 minutes, and it was worth every bite of it. You do a wonderful job. And we're looking forward to having those facilities opened on the north side of Branched Oak once again. And your experience, you realize that if you're going to run a facility like that and make it work, you've got to be willing to work when everybody else wants to play.
Exactly.
It takes a lot of work, management, and dedication. But there's a business out there that needs your operation, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And I'll be there.
Great.
Okay, well, Roger, thank you so much.
I do have one other question. With all the experience that you've had, you probably do run your employees through the hospitality
absolutely.
training.
Yeah.
And we've been asking all of the applicants that question, and I figured that you probably already had done
Yeah,
that.
the majority of them I've hired already have their that
Hospitality
certificate.
training
Yes.
certificate, and the ones that you hire, you'll encourage them to take it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
All right.
Okay. Any further questions? Well, Roger, thank you so much. Is there anyone who would speak in opposition to this liquor license? Anyone in a neutral position? Okay, now according to law, we need to allow this to be open for one more week, and then we'll take action on that following, okay? All right, so we'll close, we'll keep it open for one more week, and then we will move on to B.
And I don't believe there's any reason for Mr. Pletcher to return
No.
next week, unless you choose to.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. So, Mr. Clerk, item B?
Next is County Special Print Number 1500 request 006, which is a request from PJB Farms LLC to develop the Coyote Ridge Community Unit Plan on property generally located at Northwest 70th Street and West Rock Creek Road.
Okay, we will now open the public hearing for the Coyote Ridge Community Unit Plan Development. And first of all, speaking in explanation, support of this is, would you please?
Sarah Hartzell, Planning Department.
Mhm.
Oh,
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. The application that you have before you today is an AG, agriculturally zoned CUP, or Community Unit Plan. This is located just south, about half a mile from the unincorporated village of Agnew. It is approximately 138.44 acres. Density calculations with a density bonus of 25% as allowed would allow up to 9 units on this property. I'll show you the full layout first. So the large area, the outlots surrounding the proposed lots would be reserved for agricultural use. I do want to point out that this layout has a different street pattern from the next one I'll show you. That was the original application. It has been revised. You can see the 9 units up at the north end there. On the previous photo, you may have noticed that there's terracing in that north area. This is where the there's kind of a knoll there, so there's a lot of topography, which is often undesirable to farmers, but very desirable to home builders who would like to have that walkout opportunity on their property. This is a close-up and the revised street layout for those lots. We, of course, always encourage connectivity to adjacent land to provide for future connection if there is additional dwelling units developed on adjacent property. This allows us to make sure that our local road access to public right-of-way, the arterial right-of-way, is minimized, so we can take access from that same point for future development. The reason that this application is coming to you instead of being final action at the Planning Commission, which typically would be the pattern for a CUP, is the block length. There's one block on the south. I won't put that up again so I can minimize the switching back and forth here. But the southern block, the roadway that runs along there, our standards say that a roadway shouldn't be more than 1,320 feet, which is a quarter of a mile, without some kind of a connection to the adjacent property. This allows internal circulation, pedestrians generally won't walk further than a quarter of a mile to go from one dwelling to another, for instance. So this is kind of a standard that's for all of our zoning jurisdictions. Now, in residential areas, that's a standard that you would definitely want to adhere to because you've got many lots and lots of opportunities for kids to ride bicycles back and forth to one another's house. You don't want them to ride half a mile to get around to a friend's house. In the AG district and the AGR districts where the lots are 3 acres, it doesn't make quite as much sense to have that requirement. In this particular case, they are providing connection to the north, they're providing connection to the south. East of here is a railroad, so the opportunity for any crossing and connection with the highway on the east side probably is not reasonable. So we believe that they are providing the necessary access and we're recommending approval of the waiver of that block length to allow it to be longer than 1320. This application went to Planning Commission, I believe, on the 4th of March. Yes, 4th of March. At that time, we had significant testimony from people with concerns over roadways and water access in this area. At the time, we weren't aware that there were going to be a lot of opposition to especially on the water questions, and we didn't have the staff at that meeting that our planning commission would really wanted to talk to. We do have John Chess here today from the health department, so he can answer any questions that you have. The planning commission asked to hold that application for an additional 2 weeks, so they didn't take action on it until March 18th. At March 18th meeting, John Chess was kind enough to come to that meeting and was able to provide sufficient information to the Planning Commission for them to recommend approval of the application to you. And that was a unanimous recommendation. I don't know if you have any additional questions about the property. I won't go in too much into the water questions since we do have John here to be able to answer those for you, and it's better to get information from the horse's mouth, I think. And if you've got questions on the roadway, the primary concern on the roadway is the access through Agnew, which would probably be one of the more highly used accesses for this property, even though you have to go north, cross, and then come down, because the access on the South Rock Creek Road is not as good a condition roadway. So that would probably be the preferred access for a lot of the residents. That roadway, the little section, it's only a few hundred feet long, has pretty good traffic counts on it, gets it up close, and this would probably push it over that 400 trips per day level that we like to look at for possible paving. And the residents in that area many, many years ago had been told that that piece would be paved and would like to see that done. And the water information, we did have also Alan Mosier at the Planning Commission's second hearing on this, and he was able to share quite a bit of information that I believe is in the record, and you should be able to review that as well as John's information. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Is there anyone else who would speak in favor of this?
My name's Dan Rosenthal.
Would you guys want
And
to
please
sign
sign
in?
in.
here?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then we'll swear you in here when he's done.
In your name, sir?
Eugene Benish.
Jean Benish?
Yes.
If I could go ahead and swear you guys in.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes. I do.
Again, my name's Dan Rosenthal, engineer for Riga Engineering Group here in Lincoln, and we're working for Gene Benish to prepare this site. I guess I want to go through just some of the comments that we received earlier, just so that we can.
If I could just make one thing. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes, okay?
Certainly,
Yeah.
yep. During the design, and Sarah kind of showed you the layout of the project, so there were some concerns about stormwater runoff. And this site does not require anything as far as stormwater detention or runoff, and the water would be conveyed by ditches along the roadway that would be built. The site through the Lancaster County Health Department, properties on this nature require 5 gallons per minute minimum for capacity for water wells. The well that we tested is pushing around 30 gallons per minute. I did talk to Burlington Northern Santa Fe. There were some concerns about the railroad crossings and the safety, and I spoke to the local person with BNSF, and if we need to, we can do what we call a diagnostic review of the site and make sure that the trees are cleared or whatever, because there was a concern about safety for that. Talking about the well themselves, the closest residence is about 1,000 feet to the well that's kind of on the north property towards the west end of the property. That well is right around 160 feet deep. The one that we drilled as a test well, that should probably be in your packet. The well that is closest, about 1,000 feet away, is about 105 feet deep. And when Alan Mosier was here, we had talked about, and he had looked at some of the test data and the well data, and the wells are at 2 different aquifers. The one that's 1,000 feet away is at a higher aquifer in this well that we drilled. So the thought is that these new wells would be at a lower aquifer, and they're blocked with a clay layer, so they aren't, working against each other. Let me see what else. There's a question if we're going to have all these new power lines come in, and talking to the power district, any new transformers and stuff would come off the existing power lines, and they would most likely be underground. The transformers would probably be in the front yards, just to save on expense. I guess that's all I really have. If you have any questions for me, or does Gene have anything to add?
Larry?
Or
The existing well that's 1,000 foot away, that's 105 foot deep, what was the yield on that well?
try to see here. Well, I guess there really wasn't any data at the time. There was nothing recorded as far as what the yield is.
Is that the irrigation well?
No, that's the residential well. We're thinking it's probably around in the 20s maybe, gallons per minute.
And also, I did go over and on my way to the Dan Benish funeral in Valparaiso yesterday, I did go early and around the property. Mr. Olson and I tried to go see it on a couple occasions. I do believe that it's going to depend on which way the traffic goes. If they're employed in the Valparaiso area, they're probably going to go through Agnew. If they're employed in the Lincoln area, they're probably going to go on Rock Creek Road.
Correct.
Is there anything that you know of county-wise that would be a county expense to improve Rock Creek Road that needs to be done?
Nothing that I know of. It's it would still keep the traffic counts lower. I mean, it won't raise the traffic counts to that 400 level. Certainly, it wouldn't do that. And again, going back to there's a concern about safety, and so I talked to Burlington North and Santa Fe about if the need to go out and review that site, they would be more than willing to do that. As far as if we need to clear some trees, or if they would look at having to do like the crossing, update the. Not the signals, but maybe the crossing itself with the timbers or concrete crossing.
I do know, since that's in my my county commissioner district, that railroad is not highly utilized. In fact, yesterday I saw one car motor passenger on it, just a one unit, and you don't see that very often anymore. Years ago, that was pretty highly used railroad.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Bill?
Thank you. Mr. Rosenthal, I'm looking at the site map here.
Correct.
And a large portion of this parcel of land will remain in agricultural use, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Are there any irrigation wells on that portion of land at the present time?
No.
Is there anything that you know of that would impede the digging of additional agricultural wells, perhaps in this agricultural area?
Nothing that I'm aware of, no. It's my understanding, and that we had the county attorney, I believe, was here the last meeting, and she spoke. She's right there. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Here she is. And she spoke about state law and water rights. And it's my understanding from that conversation that a person can apply for and receive an irrigation well. So even though this parcel would be broken off, it can no longer be used at this current stage for additional residential, but if a person wanted to, I guess they could put a well there by state law. But it's my understanding also that I believe residential wells have a right before the irrigation wells.
Do you have any information or opinions about the impact that irrigation wells would have on domestic water availability?
Looking at what Mr. Mosier spoke about, he spoke about a well that was to the east. Not sure how far away east it was, but I think through his calculations and
About a half mile.
about a half mile, that well, and it doesn't run that often, but if it was running like it could run, it would within I think 10 hours use about as much water as these 10 lots or whatever would use an entire year.
Is it normal that you only drill one test well for a project like this?
That's what the county requirement is, and that's something that we have to add to the application. So that's, of course, the minimum again is through John's testimony was that 5 gallons per minute is a county standard right now.
I read all the material very carefully,
Okay.
and one thing that struck me was the use of language that was not very precise. It appears, it seems. If I were an adjacent property owner, I'd want a little more specificity and a little more certainty in the language.
Well, I mean, if I was a potential landowner, I would, want to see a well data, make sure that a well that I purchased or lot I was going to purchase had the capacity to meet my needs and not go on some assumption either. So I would assume that a buyer would ask for that information, and that's one reason why we give the test well data.
Do you know whether or not they plan to drill wells before they sell the lots on each lot? So the buyer will know what the availability is and the quality of water?
That would be Gene's call, but I would think that a developer wouldn't take on that expense because you just don't know where they're going to put their house. And
Isn't this a recommendation of the Planning Commission?
yes, it is.
So you would just ignore that recommendation because
Oh,
of
you
the
mean
cost?
from the wells, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was more a recommendation before somebody would actually build so they knew what they were getting.
Yes, that is a recommendation from the Planning Commission, correct?
Before they would build, but not sure if before they bought the lot. But whatever's in the recommendation, that's what would follow.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I do have a question too, on that one well that you had said you did not know what the gallons were per minute. Is that something that you would be, it's what?
33 gallons per
Oh, it
minute.
is 33
That
gallons.
was the one, 33 gallons per minute.
The new well, right?
No, she's talking about.
I was talking about the one that was the
I'm not-
100,
I think that should be in this. Which one are you?
I'm talking about the one that's the 105 foot. You said it was 1,000 feet away.
Yeah, it
different
says here,
aquifers?
yeah, it says on here, there's no pumping information, no data was,
Some of these, Alan says that they are not registered. There's a lot of unregistered wells in the area. He also says that the aquifer that we have ours in on that hill is over 50 feet deep. So you have a column of, the way I understand it, you have a column of water that you can get your water from. I mean, that's isn't that filled with water? Is that the way you understand it? Some of the other wells around the area, you have 7 different irrigation wells within a mile radius, or within, yeah, it'd be a mile radius, right? Or is that section? Each one of these,
Yeah, they'd be in this different sections.
right?
Yeah.
That's irrigation wells. And they can pump up to, what, 500 gallons per minute, which isn't even a, I mean, these are 9 single-family dwellings. The traffic shouldn't be a real burden, or, you know, the water usage, I wouldn't think it would be a,
Okay, I tell you what, Gene, we asked a question here. Do you have a testimony that you would like to give?
I think Dan said pretty much.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I'm looking here at what Alan had supplied, section 14. He has some information here from, looks like from 72 foot, about 20 gallons per minute, and around 95 to 105 feet, about 15
Dan,
gallons
the
per
piece of
minute.
paper you're looking at, what page is that on, so we can see what you're talking about? Or put it on the screen, either
Okay.
way.
Oh, yeah, that would be good.
There you go.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I'm looking right here at this area right here, where he has 95 to 105, 15 gallons per minute. And then from 65 to 72, it looks like it has 20 gallons per minute. And again, the minimum is 5 gallons per minute.
Any further questions? Yes, Larry?
Question for Mr. Benish. By right, you're allowed 1 acreage for every 20 acres, and you have, when you take the railroad and the roads and everything, you're very close to 140 acres, which would allow you 7. What is your purpose for going with the cluster rule so that you could put these on, and how big are these lots going to be?
They're over the 3 acre.
Right. I'm not sure if this is in your packet or not. So you can see that, starting up here, this lot here is 4 acres, 3.86, 388, 365, 347, 4.12, 3.4, 3.4, and 4.9.
So they're gonna average 3.5 or bigger, which is what the health department usually likes. So the people have the option of either doing a sewer system or a lagoon.
Correct.
With that much ground.
And here's our existing test well right here. And from here to the farm place over here, it's about 1,000 feet.
Thank
And
you.
we're gonna use that well. Lot 1, or this lot 2 would use that well.
One of the things we have considered in the past is asking people to drill a well before they offer the lots for sale. And what we found, just exactly what you just said, you don't know where people want to position the house. And then once the people decide where they want to position the house, I think it's a good idea to drill a well before you build the house, and then pump it for a while. Northwest of there, we did have some people pump a well for 3 days, thought it was in good shape, build a house, moved into it. Within a week, it went dry. They were just in a dry pocket. The amazing thing is, and I think that was only like a 15-gallon, 12 or 15-gallon well, they moved over 32 feet. This is on the northwest corner of Branched Oak Road, Rock Creek Road, and 140th. Moved over about 30 feet, drilled another well, and got 32 gallons a minute. So in that area, you really don't know what water you're going to get because of the different aquifers that they go down. But it's good to drill a well and then pump it for an extended period of time to make sure that you do have water before you build a house. And the trouble with drilling a well ahead of time, not knowing where the outbuildings are going to be, if they want to go with a lagoon system, that might be the most opportune place for it. So that's the reason why over the years we have kind of gone away from that, drill a well first before you offer it. But we always do like a test hole in the area so we have a rough idea, is there water there or not?
Yes, Bill?
I'm looking at some of the documentation here, and it looks to me as if there are 30 total wells in this grid, and I don't know what page number, it looks like 37.
That are registered.
And there are some wells that are not registered in the area.
Alan was saying.
And there, 7 of these 30 that are registered are irrigation wells, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Page 38, and I see a note here that only 1 irrigation well uses twice what the 9 houses would use in 12 months in this proposal. My concern is the impact of irrigation wells on the availability of water, not only for the 9 houses you're proposing here, but for people who live in and around that area. And it's my understanding that the ability to restrict irrigation wells is pretty limited. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, as long as they meet all the requirements.
Well, that's an ongoing issue for me.
Okay, any further questions? All right, well, thank you so much for your testimony. And is there anybody else who will speak in support? Okay, then what we'll do is we'll move on to those who will speak in opposition. Now, what I would like to do, I see quite a few of you, what I would like to do is to have you come up one at a time. The next person to speak, immediately stand behind that individual so that we'll have a continual process, okay?
Actually take the sheet and sign in ahead of time.
Yeah.
You want to raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. My name is Donald D. Olson. Address is 318 County Road 29, Valparaiso, Nebraska. I have one question. The other meetings that I attended here, no one had to swear in. Last week I was at a meeting here and no one swore in. Why are
Well,
we swearing in today?
Let me explain that. Okay, what you're doing right now is a public hearing, and the other where you were listening to people talk, that was public comment.
Okay,
So
thank
there
you.
is a difference. And please, I wanted to mention to you, if you will keep your comments to about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm nervous. Okay, here's, I'd like to have you pass those out to the commissioners, please.
Are these the same? Yeah, okay.
This is additional testimony from previous testimony. I went around to this Aspen Builders.
Kelly?
Up on the screen, right?
Okay.
This is like the Aspen Builders area, and all these people here, they signed the petition. There's people to the south that signed the petition, people to the west. And this here, I don't know why these people never got letters. I have land that's straight up the road north, 1 mile from this property right here, and none of these people received a letter on this. Why? And here's, I went and talked to Paul Zurich at the NRD, and here's numerous wells, and it tells you how many gallons. Here's one at 3 gallons per minute. 80 foot deep, 5 gallons per minute, 145 foot deep. The well's sitting at 140 feet, it's 150 foot deep. Here's another one here, 5 gallons per minute, and here's the addresses. And it's 50 foot deep, and, well, it's over here, it's 80 foot deep, and the well's sitting at 50. And this one here, they didn't have it's an unregistered well. 10 gallons per minute. There's a 6 gallon per minute, 12 gallon per minute, 15 gallon per minute, 12 gallons, 12, 15. Now these are all in Aspirin building area right here. Am I going too fast? Or?
No.
I'm trying to get through this so you guys can all move on. 12 gallons per minute, 10 gallons per minute, and 15 gallons per minute. Now, Paul brought this up on the computer for me. I do not have a computer, and I talked to him all about this. And he says that the groundwater issue in Lancaster County, you can have a pool of water maybe as big as this desk right here, and you move over, and it could be just as big as this room. So you never know what kind of condition you're going to be drilling water for water. And here's the runoff. I went down and talked to the NRCS office. I got his name right here. And he's telling me there's 40 acres of runoff going into this creek, 20 acres of runoff, and 15 acres of runoff here. And we didn't determine this one here. I mean, this is a rough determination. I mean, he didn't put it, you know, really, but it's close, because he's an expert.
You have 1 minute.
Excuse me? 1 minute left? Okay. I'll just skip all this stuff. This is the Highway 79 crossing at Rock Creek Road. This shows you the stream bed.
Can we get that to come out a little bit?
Excuse me?
Raise it up a little.
Yeah.
What do you want to do here?
There,
you
okay,
go.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a stream bed here, and here's the railroad track here. And Highway 79, what they plan on doing, they're gonna put a box culvert. Now this is north. And they're gonna cut off this, how this water drains in here, and they're gonna put a detention wall along here, and this is supposed to go over here, and then this is supposed to go over here. And they said, a detention cell, release of water, level of detention flow, you can't change the detention flow of the water right now, how it is. Because the Army Corps of Engineers won't let you change that. And then you have to have the time of concentration, release of water, original ditch flow. You can't, the original ditch flow cannot be changed. It can't be higher, it can't be lower. So when you're putting in these houses, you're gonna have to put a detention cell in here to collect the water that's gonna be erosion coming off the houses and the roads. And then you have to release it slowly so it's gonna, the ditch level won't increase. And here's the people.
Okay, and actually, your time is up. So, are there some questions that you have?
Well, I'll have some questions, I think, for the county engineer, but if you want some people to finish their testimony, maybe we can group all questions together.
Yeah,
for-
okay, we get
At
to
the end.
question. All right, and so maybe there could be another person who can deal with this then too. So, Elaine?
I'll be able
Thank
to
you for your
rise.
time.
Okay.
You want to raise your
My name
hand?
is Elaine Olson.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Okay. I think if farm ground is farmable, I think it should stay intact as farmable land. And the problems in the area won't go away anytime soon. And I want to thank you all for visiting the site. You know, it's very important for you to see, and it was very important for you to listen to our opinions. We really appreciate that. And we've enjoyed meeting all of you. So I gave Don some more time, but that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Next. And you've signed in already?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your name?
Sharon Crotterville, and I live at 19,000 Northwest 84th.
Okay.
I protest the development of Kyle Ridge located at Northwest 70th and Walkwright Road. Water is my concern. I've had 3 wells dug on our property in my 50 years that I have lived there. People in the area are all having problems. Some have 2 wells for their homes. Neighbors are having hard time using water outdoors. More homes, less water we will have. We people might have to dig new wells if the development is approved. This area has been noted for shortage of water years ago by the elderly neighbors that we have had living there. Our whole neighborhood is concerned about the water. World problem, I would say, is our issue. If we don't take care of our water problems, people won't be able to go ahead and have wells, and we won't be able to have water and live out there. We'll have to go ahead and find someplace else to go ahead and build or whatever. And that's really a concern of the neighborhood.
Okay, Larry?
Loretta, could you, I don't know if there's a map up there or whatnot, could you tell us which direction and where you live? I believe you're west and northwest of the proposed area, are you not?
I live north, and I think about a 1/4 of a mile south. And I'm on the right side of the road.
Well, you couldn't live north
North
and
and
south
south,
both.
yeah.
I think
On the left
think
side
west.
of the road,
Okay,
okay?
West.
sure. I know where you live.
Yeah.
I just, to
Okay.
put it in reference, I just
Well,
want to
you
get it
know,
on the
it's hard
record.
to explain when you're not.
When you drive to it automatically every day, don't you? You bet.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sharon.
John Benish, I live 7704 West Davie Road.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth? And did you get a chance to sign in?
Yes, I'm saying it. I urge the county commissioners to hear the voices of your concerned public and urge you to decline the application for the following reasons. You have heard multiple people talk about the lack of water, water concerns. Mr. Mosier did weave a mighty fine tale of drilling wells and of having found that elusive fountain of youth on this property. I do like the recommendation that these 9 wells be drilled before approval. This has been a huge concern of all the people here. The NRD is just starting to do some flyovers now of doing water research in this area. They haven't got to this area yet, but I would like the board to wait until that is done so that we can see what the aquifer is in this area. Next concern is the sewage system for this addition. Don talked about the runoff from this property, and you're gonna have 9 probably above ground sewer systems that's gonna wash all this sewage down into this creek. And then also this addition is on a very steep hill, which is classified as highly erodible land. And then also the lot on the southwest corner, that is in a creek bottom, is that classified as a wetland? What recommendations or following do you have to do in a wetland? If we as farmers break out wetland or don't follow our plan for highly erodible land, we are denied our farm payments. Why should this be different? I also have a concern about the entrance to this property. The land is over 5 feet higher elevation than the county road, so you're gonna have to have a steep incline going into here. You're gonna have 9 units of traffic coming out onto this road at a steep angle. Plus, it's also close to the crest of the hill on Northwest 70th.
on the original application with 9 lots on a cul-de-sac, and now there's a Northwest 67th and 68th Street, does that mean that this land is open for more property development on this property? That's another huge concern for our future area of more water use. And then what building guidelines are followed? Does this follow under the City of Lincoln building codes? If this is an acreage, does that mean they have to follow all Lincoln codes for outbuildings? Is there livestock allowed on this property? You know, things of that nature. And then on the website, subdivisions and vacations of public ways, county land subdivision regulations, there's 10 chapters, which is very specific on what needs to be followed. Is that all being considered on this? On a development review off of the website, this is the one that really concerns me. The floodplains, wetlands and disturbances. Proposed alterations to qualifying wetlands must be permitted by the Corps of Engineers. Federal law requires that all land disturbance of over 1 acre of land requires a construction stormway permit to ensure that erosion and off-site sedimentation are limited through the use of best management placements. The Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality is the land agency for issuance of NPDES permits for land disturbance of 1 acre or greater for areas outside the City of Lincoln 3-mile radius. So I want to make sure that that's all followed. And then also on the land that is being left as farmland, in the proposal, there's elimination of driveway entrances to that farmland. There's one right on the corner of Northwest 70th and Rock Creek Road that needs to be removed. There's another one that needs to be moved on the east side of that property by an acreage that's presently there. And there's also, I think, one on the west side that needs to be removed. I want to make sure that all this is followed.
Any questions, Larry?
I guess, yes, Mr. Benish, on these driveway removals, what's the basis for that request?
It is in the application. I think I had it marked. But it says there's removal of I can find it, but there was in the original application, there's removal of existing driveways into the farmland and which ones are allowed.
But there will be access allowed because we have to.
Right, there is access, but there's
that's
more
all I
than
want to
what's.
get to for the remaining part that would be farmed. We do have to allow
Right,
them
but there is
access.
more driveways than what is in the plan.
Than what's needed.
Than
Okay.
what's in the plan.
Okay. We'll probably speak to the county engineer about that a little later on. Thank you.
And I do have a question. You had mentioned above-ground sewage.
Right, are these gonna be lagoon systems, or are they gonna be?
Because, okay, and when you were talking about the drainage off of that, if they are lagoons, do you know, has there been a test done as to what type of soil that is? Is it a clay-like schist or whatever?
No, I know that this, having previously farmed this ground, that is a hard clay soil up there, very rocky. I would say that you're gonna have to have lagoon systems. It's a very rocky ground, so it is very susceptible to erosion. That's why it's been in CRP for 20 years.
That's one of the things that I think that I would be interested in finding out is what type of septic system or lagoon system or whatever.
Right,
Yeah.
what needs to be done up there.
Okay.
And all this needs to be done before this is approved, because you can't go back once it's approved.
Yes, Bill?
I suppose that there is a way to do testing of soil to see how well it percolates.
Right, that's what the health department would have to do that.
I have not seen in my reading of these documents any tests of that sort.
No, there hasn't been.
You raise a good point. I don't think anybody, even the people who might purchase one of these lots, would want to have open lagoons for sewage.
Right, and being on a very steep hill, the lots on the top are going to wash down to the next one, to the next one. I mean, those people at the bottom are not going to want their waste runoff running across their property.
But isn't testing for soil percolation a pretty standard procedure in projects of this sort?
I would think that would be a requirement. I don't know why it has not been done.
This is the first time I've heard this issue raised. It's an interesting one.
Right, there's more issues here than just water. I mean, water is the main concern here, but you're adding 9 houses in this little area. You're basically development. If you were in Lincoln, you'd be on city sewer, you'd be on city water, or you'd have all that treated. You're out here in the open, putting that high of a dense population on highly erodible land on a very steep hill. You're changing quite a bit. You're putting a lot of stress on this ground.
And you're suggesting that it may not have the percolation capabilities
Right,
that
it
you
may
would
not
need
have-
for septic tanks, right?
Right, it may not have the percolation to support the sewer system. We don't know what kind of water is up there. You know, he drilled one well and he had a good spot. But listen to everybody that says how bad their water is, how little bit of water there is. Very hard water. I mean, ours is very, very hard water.
It's also high in sodium content.
And nitrate, we have a problem with nitrate too.
Well, the test well did not show that. It was the nitrate was 1.96.
Right. But that's just 1 out of 9. I mean,
Yeah.
you move, like Larry was saying, you move 30 feet and you can get a different spot. What if that's the only spot on this hill that there's water? Then you would have to have a community water system pumping to all these other 9 houses. Then you're gonna fall under EPA requirements for having that well tested as a community well. I mean, these are all questions that need to be asked, and there needs to be an answer.
Okay, so basically, each house then, each dwelling would have to have a well as well as some sort of a septic system.
Right. Otherwise, if there's
Yeah.
not percolation on this, then you're gonna have to have a
Yeah, see,
community
that's the-
septic system, and then you're gonna follow under different guidelines.
Yeah, it depends upon how the laterals run and everything like that.
You know, then you're gonna have to have a sewage treatment plant.
Okay. Any further questions? All right, thank you. We
Thank you.
still have a few more books to go.
Hi there, John Osmera.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I live directly across the road west of the proposed development. I shouldn't say directly, 100 yards north of it. The well that keeps being brought up, that's approximately 1,000 feet away or whatever. That's most likely mine. To give you a little history on that well, which I did provide this to the Planning Commission originally, and I don't remember exactly. We drilled probably somewhere around 5 or 6 test holes. One of those, I do recall, exceeded 300 feet. From that 105 down to 300, we hit nothing but mud, clay, which I know Mr. Mosier that was spoke kind of wanted to dispute my my data there a little bit that said that we didn't go deep enough, that we should have went deeper. Well, we did go deeper, and there was nothing there. So as far as the water, it did take us multiple tries to find a usable well. Is it spectacular? No, it's marginal. You talk about the water quality. I should have changed out my sediment filter before I came here, because the thing will just be packed full of rust, because there's that much iron in the water. If you fill up a white bucket within about a day, it's just red. One thing I also want to bring up is we keep talking about this railroad crossing. I don't know where it's a Union Pacific crossing. It's not a BNSF crossing. So talking to BNSF about improving this crossing, I'm surprised that they would be very willing to do much over there. I do live in the area. My dad lives farther north, right by the tracks. There's a minimum of 2 trains per day. Usually it goes from Omaha to Lincoln, then Lincoln back to Omaha. Actually saw the car go by that Larry was referring to yesterday. Was a repair car, train that was running up and down the rail. So that rail is used on a daily basis, 7 days a week, minimum of 2 trains a day. From my, I don't have any scientific data, but that's being in the area. The traffic counts, I have some concerns about the traffic counts. We go back to 2010. The county engineer has said that they would initiate some new counts. I don't know that those have been done. I can tell you from where I live, and since I'm just a little bit north of the property, every time we come to Lincoln, we go south and take Rock Creek Road. Unless there's snow because Rock Creek drifts in horrible, or when it, even like today with the rain, that road is
Not good.
yeah, bad. I was told that road was formerly a dirt road, that it used to only be rock up to the first 2 houses off of the highway. And when they made it a gravel road, they just came in there and put gravel, and that road actually isn't even built to county specifications because all they did was come in and rock the dirt road, and that it should be, that the right-of-ways are not as wide as what they're supposed to be, and that the road really should be wider. And from personal experience driving that road, you come over the hills, it is very, very narrow. I also, speaking to the residents in Agnew, which is the unincorporated village just about a half mile away, everybody that I've spoke to down there is concerned about it, about the development and what it's going to bring, the extra traffic that may come that way, as well as the water. Just like the rest of us are concerned with the water. And I will tell you that regarding the septic systems and the perk tests, when we built our house, we did we wanted a septic system with laterals. We drilled the hole. Part of the percolation test is filled with water, and the water sat in there and never moved for about 4 days.
That's not going to work.
So we did have to go with a lagoon for septic, and
1 minute.
considering that we're only talking 100 yards away, I find it hard to believe that the soil changes this much right across the road. So I agree with with John Benish that I think there's a lot of other data that needs to be gathered on this property before a decision is made. That's all I have.
Appreciate your testimony. Certainly agree with you on Rock Creek Road. As I drove it yesterday, it bore out exactly what you said. How many acres do you have in your acreage?
30.
You have 30. And so you had room enough to maneuver around to put a lagoon in?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And in the design of your lagoon, don't they take into consideration the amount of sewage you're going to have? And have you ever had any problems with your lagoon running over?
No. So as I recall anyway, I don't want to speak out of term here, but during the building process, that was the
to get your building permit?
Yeah, the septic installer, if you will. That's part of, he's certified through the health department or something, permitted, whatever. But he did the perk test, and then they have to build up the lagoon and seal it, et cetera, et cetera. So I didn't build the lagoon, so I guess I don't know all the rules that are involved with that.
And I think you have to fence it off so
yes,
little kids couldn't get
it has to be
into
fenced off, posted, gate locked, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, they do size it as I remember, they do size it based on how many bathrooms and bedrooms or fixtures in the house, something like that. So yeah, it can be, the bigger the house, the bigger the lagoon.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, just one moment. Anybody who's coming up following, if you could just please come forward.
Larry Bush.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Yes, I am John's neighbor, just right to the north of John. John and I purchased the ground about the same weekend, and he used a well driller outside of from north Nebraska, and so did I. And anyway, John was doing those test wells, and he came up negative for 5 times. And I remember him saying, well, why don't you have your guy give it a shot? So he quit at the moment. My well driller came up, we drilled, and he hit water, and I think I've only got 10 feet of water. I'm at the 85 feet. There's only 10 feet of gravel. And he pumped it at the time, and he quit at 22 gallons a minute. And he says, well, it drops down, but it recouped. And he goes, it'll suffice your house, but you probably won't be having any agricultural or any irrigation of any nature and animals. Do you plan on having any animals in your acreage? And I says, no, very little. He says, it won't support a livestock, cows and whatnot. Yes, the perk test, I have a lagoon at my facility. We did the same test where they dig a hole and they fill it with water. 4 days later, that water was still in there. They opted, I was trying to get laterals. The only way I could, he's like, it just isn't gonna work. It has to be a lagoon. My lagoon is 400, I chose to put it 400 feet away to the west of the house. Because there is, like you say, you have to fence it off. It's fenced off. They're high maintenance. You have to keep the cattails out. You have to, and I just can't picture a lagoon in this person's property. Right next to it is a well, because that's the only place they can find water. So there could be a situation in a new development where there's a well right here, and right across the property line is a lagoon. And yeah, John pretty much, said what I was going to say, so I'll keep it short. Any questions? Oh, we have volunteer fire in Raymond and Val. Are they able to man up enough to, if there was a grass fire like there was last spring in that corner? And 84th and Rock Creek Road, it's not a blind intersection, but it's on top of a knoll. And I've seen countless people, either not see that stop sign or run past that stop sign. So there's a concern right there too, I think. Any questions?
Yes.
Are you in the Valparaiso Fire District or the Raymond?
Raymond.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But they have mutual aid, and Raymond, Malcolm, Val, they all respond.
Yeah, last spring they had everybody there. But yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you. Next.
My name is Mary Berry at 18,700 Northwest 70th Street.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Okay, my home is just a mile south of where this development is. Okay, and the reason I want to talk is 2 members of the Planning Commission have said that they were not able, the county told them they could not use water as a criteria for changing the comprehensive plan. And that would be a good idea for us to mention this to the county, so that was one thing I wanted to bring up. And then I know Mr. Mosier is an expert on well drilling, but we deal with our wells every day, so I feel we have some credibility. And my well was dug 230 feet. I'm a mile south, 230 feet to get enough water for this domestic. It's not a good, and the water, I have to change the filter that comes into the house once a week because it fills up with the rust sediment and it stinks. So of course I buy water to drink. And I also was wondering if there's any possibility that the health department, the man said that he doesn't know, and nobody knows, if all 9 of these houses will get water. We've got one test drill, well. But because we're in Lancaster County and you don't know. Is there any study that could be done before? And I just heard it sounded like we could put another development beside this one. Shouldn't some study be done about the availability of water in the area? Either the developer come up with something or the county to help out.
I think that that's a valid point, and we'll just have to take that into consideration.
I want to clarify something you just said. There's another development proposed for across the road?
Oh, no. When he was talking here, when I believe no. Was it you that said something about the way the road goes in so another development could be connected to this one?
Okay, you're just referencing something
Yes,
Sarah said, not a specific.
We don't even know if there's water right now for these.
Okay, I understand what
We're
you're
already
saying.
saying, let's set this up right so
Got
we
it.
can put another one beside it.
Charles Berry, 17,800 Northwest 70th.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Just wanted to touch on a few facts. I know that you guys got hit pretty hard with the water subject. Fact, Mr. Mosier's not a geologist. I can give you some facts about the water use in the area. We know from having multiple wells, irrigation, livestock, and domestic, we can affect the well levels and the other wells by using one or another. That's just a fact. We can also affect the surface water. It's all connected. We know that from experience. The irrigators in the area, we feel we're self-regulated. I'm self-regulated to the point that I do not irrigate. The irrigators that I think they were talking about, they're about half a mile away. They're self-regulated because they run out of water. There's not enough water to fully irrigate a crop under, to give it full irrigated production. There's not the capacity there. So our concern is, will we fall into a regulated area like there is just a mile north where, where we have to comply with a state regulation for irrigation? I personally don't feel like I need to quit irrigating to make water available for more acreages. It's farm ground. We farm out there. I just don't want to be in that situation. I know it could happen, but I don't want to be there. I think maybe we touched on that's a Union Pacific Railway. So any conversation with BNSF probably didn't help. There's a 100-car train that travels that track every night, and you may not know that. And it comes down from Columbus, goes to ADM, and then there's a small local train that goes up there every day, across that crossing. And one of my other concerns is a concentration. I just don't feel like we need to concentrate homes in the area. I almost feel like we'd be better going back to saying, you want acreage, you're gonna have to pony up and buy 20 acres. The math doesn't add up on this either. If it's 138 acres, we're gonna divide that by 20. We just can't get 7 out of that. We can't get 7 and bonus it to 9. It doesn't work. That's not my kind of math. And besides that, there's already 2 acreages cut off of this quarter. There's one to the east of the highway, and there's also another one where Mr. Swoboda lives. So you're gonna put 11 acreages on this. It's not even a quarter. So I'd like to thank you for your time and your consideration. And
Any questions?
that's all I have.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
My name is Andy Berry. I live at 2906 Summit Boulevard in Lincoln.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. I want to thank the members of the commission for all the attention that they've paid to all the concerns that have been expressed here. I live in Lincoln. I grew up in this area. I still farm in the area. I still own farmland that's located about a half a mile from the proposed well. I just want to make a few quick points. One is that, the concerns about water, that's not static. We can't say there's plenty of water, it's always going to be there. Or there's a limit on wells a mile north, but there's not a limit here, so we don't have to worry about it. I mean, things change with water, and things are changing with water. There are moratoriums going into effect all over the state of Nebraska. And so we can't assume that just because there has been water here or somewhere else in the past, that it's going to continue that way. And in fact, I think the safe assumption is that it's going to get scarcer. And we don't have any real evidence about what the state of water is under the ground here. We've got a lot of supposition, really on both sides. And we've got the personal experience of people who own wells. We've got someone who's drilled wells, but we don't know because no one's really done a study. I think at the administrative meeting a couple of weeks ago, there was some reference to like there's what I heard earlier today was the thought is that there are some different aquifers at different levels. We don't know that. There was some testimony, or there was a statement to the members of the board that there's like a 3-foot layer of clay that had to be drilled through for this test well, and so that there must be then 2 different aquifers that are separated by a 3-foot layer of clay. Well, that layer of clay is in one spot. We have no idea what the aquifers actually look like under the ground here. There's just nothing in front of the board. And so there are the issues about how does this affect existing landowners, but I think there are also some basic issues about, does this make sense from a planning standpoint, that as someone with a stake in the neighborhood, I want the board to think about. So the village, or not the village, there's Agnew's an unincorporated town about a half a mile away. There's about 12 occupied houses in Agnew. So now we're gonna add another 9. There's a couple other acreages on this spot. In effect, it's like you've got 2 unincorporated villages. And you've heard, I think, some other good points of people who live in the neighborhood, that there's some need for coordinated planning here. A municipal water supply, municipal sewer, once you start getting numbers like this. And so for Northwest Lancaster County, are we really gonna have development that gets around the benefits of municipal planning and just kind of leaves people out on their own? I don't think that's a good idea. And I guess one last point, it might be a minor one, but Mr. Bush testified about livestock, and maybe the assumption is no one's gonna have livestock out here. They're only 3-acre lots. But boy, just look in Lincoln. There are a lot of people in town that are interested in livestock. I don't know how many people I know in the city of Lincoln who have chickens, people who are interested in goats or who knows what. And that's going to be part of the appeal of moving to the country. And so I don't think you can assume that any wells that are going to be drilled here are going to be solely for domestic use. And are you going to have a situation where you got 9 people who are now competing with each other for water? Doesn't seem like a good idea to me. But again, thank you to the members of the commission. I know that there's a lot to consider here.
Hey, question? All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this development? Okay, is there anyone else who would speak in a neutral position? Okay, yes, Larry?
I'd like to call John Ches from the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department up.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Good afternoon. John Chess with Lancaster County Health Department.
Mr. Chess, we have relied on you for a lot of technical information and to help put together the rules and regulations which have guided this County Board of Commissioners for land use in the area. Could you generally tell us about water systems, permeability, and why we decided on the 3.5 acres as something, and then also explain, and maybe we'll have Sarah explain the community unit plan system to us.
If I could split these into 2 discussions, because I think questions came up about on-site wastewater systems and water. So if I could speak to on-site the first, if you don't mind.
We'd appreciate it.
Yes. Okay, Lancaster County, if you notice, the plan calls for a minimum of 3 acres, and that is to accommodate the lagoon system. Lancaster County is notorious for very tough soils. The permitting process that any house that's going to go on an individual on-site wastewater system goes through is, it's got to be a minimum of 3 acres. Then they have to either do a percolation test, which meets a certain amount of standards, or go with a lagoon. And typically the lagoon, it sounds like this area is lagoon territory because it does not perk. Even if the system does not perk very well, they can also bring an engineer and design a system up to 240-minute perk rate, then it's a mandatory lagoon. So lagoon is a viable option. It can be put in the floodplain as long as the deck is above the floodplain, so it's accepted in there. So a lagoon is an accepted process. Before a building permit is issued, the certified installer for Lancaster County and the state of Nebraska will come and identify where they tentatively plan to put this system in, where they've done a perk test, and what the size of the system. there was talk about how these systems are sized. The system's volume is determined by the bedrooms. And typically you have a main bedroom that has anticipated flow of 150 gallons per day, and every bedroom after that has 75 gallons per day. So that's how we size the system, how we anticipate the flow into either the lagoon or the on-site wastewater system. So that's an accepted standard by EPA. Any questions on the sewage system? It's been regulated since the 60s. Yes, sir.
Would you go a little bit deeper about protections that are built in so that they don't spill over and how they're secured?
Okay, like I said, they can be put into a flood zone. Their dikes are built up. They have to be at least 2 foot above the flood maximum rate or anticipated level. And the dikes have to be a certain number of feet wide, so to withstand that. And so that's pretty much it. As they're constructed, they're coned off so the water can flow around them. They have to be a certain thickness, and they have to be packed down and settled down so that the water, as it floods, will go around it. And in my years that we've had them in flood zones, I've never known one to wash away. So did that help you? Okay.
And for the record, none of these proposed acreages in this application are in the floodplain?
Not that I know of.
Madam Chair.
And then
Okay.
you want to go into the well.
Water issues. When we get an application, I don't know if that works or not.
Are we leaving the discussion of lagoons?
If, any questions, I'll answer.
Does you have a question on
I
that?
do, yes.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to visualize 9 properties with open sewers.
Lagoon systems.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How large are these?
It will basically, depending on, again, the volume flow, probably the maximum would be 60 foot across at the 5 foot level.
60 feet, are they rectangular, circular?
They can be circular or they can be rectangular. They're quite a common sewage disposal method in Lancaster County. And we have numerous subdivisions that have them side by side. That's why the 3 acre rule is in effect. There's also some minimum setbacks as far as how close that lagoon can be to your own house versus the neighbor house. It cannot be closer than 200 feet to the neighbor's house. And it also has to be so many feet off the lot line.
And if you have a minimum of 3 acres, you can accommodate lagoons?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And don't they also have to be so many feet away from a well?
Yes,
That's very
100 foot,
important.
yes, 100 foot.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's the reason we went as far, some of the old acreages were just on 1 acre, and that was pretty tight to get a well and a lagoon both in, so that's where we
Correct.
went to the 3
That's right,
acres.
yeah. 3 acres, depending on how they locate the house, there's ample room, let's say if that lagoon does fail, which I've never seen happen in 42 years, where there's ample room to move it to another location on the 3 acres.
Yeah, and if I could just mention it too, as a Realtor, I've worked with several acreages that do have lagoons, and they are among the least difficult to use. They're actually the most practical, and so in a lot of ways, when you get they are the most practical when you get into tight soils like this.
Yes, they are.
And they're really about 99%. What do you want to call it? They work well.
Correct, yeah, they do,
Yeah.
they do. The liquid and solid waste comes in there, it's held, it's facultative
Efficient.
bacteria.
Yeah, 99% efficient.
And maintenance problems other than mowing and keeping the weeds down. Cattails are usually a product that there's not enough water level in it. And
The
probably the biggest challenge is water level.
Problem is that many times people do not maintain the lagoons.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's really one of the issues.
That's right. We're working with NDEQ because some of our villages have brought to our attention as far as oversizing lagoons because it's built on anticipated flow. And if you don't have that house filled, then it's going to be a little bit bigger. And we brought this to attention NDEQ, and we're working with them to see alternate sizes that maybe, or alternate types of lagoons can be put into effect. In fact, they were down in our department last night. We had a meeting with all our installers just to go over the rules and regs and just to get to know. And they're looking at, based on our recommendations, a revised, maybe a 2-cell type lagoon where the 1 cell is dry until it's needed to overflow. And we're trying to accommodate that, and we're working with them, and we've offered to be the test people for that because we are noted for regulating on-site wastewater in the state of Nebraska.
And I do have another question too. whenever an acreage is sold, you know, the Lancaster County Lancaster County Health Department needs to test the water and say whether it is, what the nitrates are, what all the different
Coliform
sorts.
bacteria.
Yep. All of that stuff to make sure that it's consumable.
Correct. In 2006, the county and its 3-mile limit, anybody on individual on-site wastewater system or individual water supply or both have to be inspected to make sure they're conforming substantially with the current codes. We privatized that effort back to the certified installers in Lancaster County. They go out and inspect the systems, they identify what's there, we review that report to ensure that they're substantially in compliance. And we can say that over the last, since 2006, number of systems that we've seen corrected, that straight pipes and everything else has just been phenomenal. It's been phenomenally successful.
We have had some people say that there's quite a bit of rust in there, in the
Iron,
filtering
yeah.
system.
It's hard water. It's hard water.
Okay.
In the report and in the test well, it indicates that it's a hard water, and that's not surprising for Lancaster County. Water quality is a challenge in Lancaster County, whether it's north, south, east, or west. What the geologists have explained to me is as the glaciers have came through, they pushed through Lancaster County. As they receded, they left all the trash and soil here in Lancaster County, and it has resulted into a lot of deposits, Pleistocene era, and it leaves a lot of hard water, and quality is a challenge pretty much anywhere in Lancaster County. And as we identified in the report, the kind of systems that are available to improve the quality compared to what it was 20 years has significantly improved. So if you do have water quality issues, there are numerous treatment systems that are available to deal with nitrates, deal with coliform, deal with that rust and irons, things like that.
Calcium.
Yep. So we'll talk about, any questions out there? You're gonna be talking, I'll be here all day. I'm gonna talk about septic systems. So I've been doing this for 42 years, so.
You're not going to keep us here all day, right?
If you want to talk about sewage, I'll be here.
Okay, well, does that answer your questions? Larry?
Oh, yes, I'm finished. But you're going to water now, right?
Right. Essentially, when we get a subdivision request in, what we do is look for the test well. And what we did on this one is we took a look at the surrounding wells and their pumping capacity. And we used, I noted you noted we used the word appeared, because as is identified, this is Lancaster County, and you can move 50 foot away and not hit water. I mean, it's a challenge. And so what we've done is we've taken a look at the surrounding area in the wells, and it appears that there's ample water to provide domestic use, minimum 5 gallons, which is U.S. Public Health Service recommendation for domestic purposes, to those 9 homes. Does it mean we're going to find water? No, not at all. That's why we always put the caveat in there at the end of the sentence is the best thing you can do is to drill a well before you buy the house. And I believe there are several subdivisions that have gone through this process where it's been made a requirement they obtain a well permit from our department prior to issuing a building permit for the house. So that's probably the best solution. And I think if you talk to anybody involved in water issues, you drill the well to assure that there's water supply there. You do the pump test like they indicated. So, and take, pump it a day or two to see if there's water. That's probably the surest way, and even then, as someone indicated, it's not 100% sure. It's Lancaster County, it's an unknown. You're trying to figure something out under the soil. So from our standards, from what we've looked at and our experience, and we look at the wells in the surrounding area and what they produce, it appears that there's sufficient water to supply to this subdivision.
Yes, Bill?
I'm looking at your memorandum, this is part of the packet that we received, and you state here that the health department does not attempt to predict the possible impact water usage in a proposed subdivision may have on adjoining wells.
Correct.
And why is it that you don't attempt that?
Because nobody can tell me what that well is going to do in that house that we give it a permit to. If they decide to put a pond in for their koi and dig an acre out of their 2 and fill it full of water on a 24/7 basis, 24-hour, 7-day basis, or if they decide to put 3 acres in bluegrass, I don't know what they're going to do with the water, the well that they drill. So how much they pump influences what their neighbor does, and that's why. So it's just I can't predict what people are going to do with their wells.
So let's assume a best case scenario where people use their wells mostly for ordinary domestic use. They're not irrigating for grass. They're not building ponds and all of that sort of thing. And maybe they don't even wash their cars at home. They take them down to Lincoln and use our water. And pay for it. The question I have though is, is it your professional opinion that these wells in the 9 properties are likely to have an impact on adjoining property owners?
I wouldn't answer that, because I don't know what, I understand you're laying out the domestics, and it appears based on all the other wells in the aquifer that there's water sufficient to do that without impacting wells. But I think Mr. Mosier, who's been drilling wells for 100 years, his family, could probably better answer that question.
100 years?
Well, his family. Yeah.
Both your family at least that.
So, 115, I'm sorry. So, I don't want to evade the question, but I don't want to answer a question I can't give the exact accurate
So it's
answer
an
to.
imprecise science, to
Very
the
much
extent
so.
that it's science at all.
It's, the science is even debatable.
Yeah.
Because you still have people talking about water witchers, and I've talked to people in northern Lancaster County when we were working the kids that swear by water witchers. Absolutely swear, and I'm not.
There's another one.
Yeah.
Would you purchase one of these properties, and would you then be content with the water supply based on what you now know?
I'm a city guy. I don't know if I'd put up with the water quality. My son went to Peru, and the first thing they said is don't put bleach in your water, and it's a community system, because it's going to stain everything, because it's going to precipitate everything out. So I'm a city person, so not to avoid your question, but I don't think I'd want the hassle of the water quality issues and the systems. But it's what people want to do and experience. Mr. Mosier, we've talked in length of different situations where we've got people that have wells across the country that pump 1, 2, 3 gallons per minute, and what they've done is put reservoir tanks in their basement, build up a capacity of 500, 750 gallons. So it's what you want to deal with to live in the country. So have I avoided everything off?
Yes, you have managed to avoid most of my questions.
I'm a city guy, what can I say?
Okay, all right.
Any other questions I can help anybody with?
Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I think that we do have another person here that can comment upon the water, Mr. Mosier.
I got here late. Am I supposed to sign in?
Yes, please. And also, yeah, you'll be sworn in also.
If you'd raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, it is. Well, I got here late. I didn't know what all's been said, but
She's not.
first thing I want to mention is that I'm sure everybody in this room has had dealings with carpenters, mechanics, auto mechanics, truck mechanics, roofers, you name it, and you found some that are real reliable and do good work, and some of them you wouldn't recommend to anybody else. And that goes in the professions too. Doctors, engineers. Hickman's had a little problem with some engineers in our streets. And so it kind of runs the whole gamut of stuff, and the well drilling is no different. There's some well drillers that, just like a mechanic, he can do some really good work, he can mediocre work, or some really bad stuff. And I think after 115 years at the same address, we must be doing something okay, because we're still there. Nobody's run us out yet of the county or our town. We hear this all the time, even when somebody wants to buy 80 acres and put a house in, and they say, well, we heard from the neighbors that they have stinky water or they have rusty water. Well, I always tell the guy that's getting this 80 acres of ground or whatever amount of ground he's buying that you really need to know what that particular person's well is like. You know, does you have a driller's record of that particular well to tell you how deep it is and what the geology is that they went through when they drilled that well? And things like that go into being. You just can't go by what somebody says that, well, our water, we can't use too much water, or we'd have poor pressure in a house. Pressure in a house has got so many variables, especially big thing is the pipe sizing inside your house. And nowadays they use PEX piping, which is undersized piping. And then people have water filters, they have softeners, iron filters, you have it, you name it, it affects your pressure in your house. And excuse me, there's if you all have this, and there's that grid of nine sections, and they're basically a mile north, mile east, mile south, mile west of the proposed location. Well, if somebody wants to talk about something further away yet, well, if you look at section 23, and just to the west of section 23, we have a well that we made in 2006. It's 215 feet deep, has a static water level of 79 feet. We air tested that well at 80 gallons a minute, and has an expected, we air tested it at 80 gallons a minute, and then the pumping water level is estimated to be 85 feet, and it's 215 foot deep. And like the well we made for Gene Benish here, it's not just a test well, it's an actual well. It can be used for any house or for any use you want to put it to. And if you look at the well log on that, the first 65 feet of the Earth's crust is clay. And clay is a blotter, a protector of the water below it. You can't get rainwater to percolate down through 65 feet of clay. The water in these aquifers around here does not get fed from the rain. It gets fed from underground aquifers. They're all connected. Nobody can exactly knows, the geologist, nobody knows exactly how they is, because we don't have x-ray vision. All we can do is they do test holes here in the state of Nebraska, make test holes all across the state of Nebraska. They started back in the 30s. And they have records of all those, and they continue to even do that to this day. Plus now since 1993, when we had to start registering wells, all that information, we have to give the state all this information that you see on this well log here. And they put that in the database, and everybody has public knowledge of everything since 1993. But before that, there's no public knowledge because well drillers were not required to divulge these well logs to the state or federal government. The only thing that was stayed in our possession, and we're the only ones that know about these things before 1993. And to say that this is a poor area to get water you can't base it upon what people want to say about their own personal wells, because you got to know what that particular well is like. And if it's an old well, been there for 40, 50 years, there wouldn't be any record of it. But if it's made since 1993, it's supposed to have a record of it because it's supposed to be registered. And there's, in this 9-section grid, you can see that there's irrigation wells dotted from the northwest to the southeast. And there's a deep well in section 14, it's 275 feet deep. There's the one in section 23, it's 224. And the wells that are just to the west of this proposed location, on the west side of the road, and just a hair north, they weren't made deep enough. If we can go there and drill a test hole down deeper, you can get a lot better aquifer, because they stopped at 118 foot on the deepest one on the west side there, that's next to Benish's land. And it's like I said, the professionals, you can have some ones that aren't so accurate, some that are better. I found that going to doctors myself. And
And all I can say is if Gene Benish, if he can't put houses there, I'm just saying he could, if he wanted to, he could take that whole ground he's got there and put an ag irrigation well in there. Because if you look at the geology of the aquifer, you see that the aquifer starts at 98 feet. That's where you get medium to fine gray sand, and it goes on down to 160 foot sand and gravel. Well, it doesn't say gravel, it says coarse sand, which would be coarse sand to fine gravel. So he has basically 60 foot of aquifer to make an ag irrigation well. And ag irrigation wells, if they can find 30 to 40 foot of sand aquifer, they'll put an irrigation well in there for sure. And here, it's a beautiful aquifer to make an ag irrigation well. And if you saw that one piece of paper that talks about how much water a house uses versus what one irrigation well uses, you can see that houses use a lot less water than just one irrigation well. Any questions?
I want to know if I heard you right, that if Mr. Bendis wants to put in an ag well in this part that I talked about this in my first comments and questions, in that portion that's ag land and not planned to be part of the development, if he wanted to put in a center pivot there, he could do that. And that certainly would have an effect on adjoining properties, wouldn't it?
Not necessarily.
I'm talking to him.
With this aquifer that we have shown on this log right here, the well that's, let's see, we look at the front page here. He's 160 foot deep, and the deepest well closest to him is 275 feet, which would be a mile west. And a mile east, there's 285 foot wells. And there's, just to the northeast of him, there's a 98 foot ag irrigation well and a 104 foot irrigation well. Okay, so you just round those two off to 100 foot. So say those two wells that are just to the northeast of him are 100 foot deep ag irrigation wells. And he's at 160 foot. His well would be 60 foot deeper than those other ag wells.
Are you suggesting that he's probably not pumping from the same aquifer?
If you look on this other page, it says section, oh, of course, I don't have section 13 today with me.
Isn't that this section that's
there
in
it
question?
Is, right up here. The ag well that's 98 foot deep has sand and coarse gravel from 28 to 50 and 73 to 98 to sandstone. The other one has sand and gravel from 25 to 105. And the static water level is 14 foot on the one and 12 foot on the other one. And the well we made, the static water level was 87. Let me see. Okay, the static water level stays level across the ground, underground. In this, it stays. It's like a level on the bubble on your level. Okay, so those static water levels are basically 10 foot from the surface. In his well, we made it. It's 87 foot. So that's about 75 foot deep. Those wells, how do I want to say it? If you have to add to the depth of their well, which is 100 foot, about 70 feet, to come up to the same elevation. That's, you kind of go by your static water level. If you got a static water level of 12 feet and you're at a 100 foot deep well, and then you got another well that's up here, it's got a deeper water level, that means because he's uphill, a higher elevation ground. And so if you would add that difference of water level, 87 and 12 of say 75 feet, then you add that 75 feet to their depth, 100 feet, you'd be 175 feet deep. So they're basically in the same aquifer.
That's your best guess, right?
That's
No.
more science.
It's not a guess.
Is it experience?
It's on paper. You're reading somebody else's well log report and comparing it to another one, and you're within the same section. You're only about, what, a quarter mile apart or half mile apart? Yeah. It's this.
I'm trying to understand how you go about figuring out what is the amount of available water in an area and the impact that these wells might have on adjoining property owners.
Well,
I don't know the well drilling business.
Yeah,
That's why I'm asking these questions.
The log reports from these wells that I have listed here on the back sections are identified, and I've taken that information from the state registered well information, put it on there, and you have ours and from the well we made for Benish, and you have the same type of a sand aquifer on both of them. And that ag well was pumping 500 gallons a minute, and the other ag well was pumping, tested at 400 gallons a minute. That's what they were tested at. I don't know if they're running today. I mean, I have no idea if they're running today. I'm just going by what is registered with the state of Nebraska. That's what we have to go by. And if there was people are using that irrigation wells that are listed on here, I don't know. But that's when, if the wells are still there and they have a pump in them, they're not abandoned according to state records. They're still there with the pump in them, and they can be used if they so desire to turn them on. But when they were made, that's what the capacity was. That's all I can go by. And I can just tell you that the geology here is as you go from Benish and go northeast, it's downhill. And it's the same type of an aquifer. As you go west into section 14, I don't know if I've got that one. Here it is. We have a well that's 275 feet deep. He's basically a mile west, straight west. And that one, according to the state records, he has from 235 to 275, he has sandstone, which is cemented together sand. A lot of the aquifer underlying our county and adjoining counties is with sandstone, which is cemented together sand by the minerals and compression make it hard, like limestone, only it's made out of sand. Well, you see sandstone outcroppings around Lincoln. Okay, and it was tested at that particular one, according to the state, it has no pumping information provided. It just has that the static water level was 129 feet and the estimated pumping water level was 150. So that's 130 to 150. That's the 20-foot drawdown, but they don't say at what pumping rate they were doing at that. So I can't answer that, but just going by the aquifer, you have 20 foot of sandstone, and from our experience of having 20 foot of sandstone, you could put a pump in there and pump over 100 gallon a minute if you had a big enough pump in there. And the other ones to the west in section 14, as you can see, they're 105, 118, and 85. The 85-foot one had, from 75 to 85, had sand and gravel, and they were pumping 20 gallons a minute. And the one that's 118 foot deep, they had gravel, coarse, written down as coarse gravel from 107 to 115. That's 8 foot, and they were pumping to 15 gallons a minute. And they're at 118 foot deep. If you look at our log that ends where it ends at 122, it shows 98 to 122 fine gray sand. they might have stopped in that. I don't know. The driller's log doesn't indicate anything about drilling any deeper to see what's down deeper. It just says it ends at 118 foot. So yeah, I think if you want to make sure that Mr. Benish has enough water on that property of his, you can make another test well to the east end of it. But I mean, to say that if you're going to affect the neighbors around there, these house wells shouldn't affect any of these wells, because these irrigation wells are already there. They've been there for a long time. And if they're going to start pumping at 500 gallons a minute, and you got a house pump that's doing 15 to 20, I don't know.
It's going to run out of water probably, right?
The irrigation wells are going to suck it dry before the house wells do. That's for sure. That's why maybe
but
some.
you combine the two, and you've got double use.
Say that again.
If you combine domestic use and ag use, then you put more pressure on the aquifer. I'm trying to get my hands around this whole issue of how do we know how much is there, and what's the likely impact of this project on adjoining property owners?
Well, the only way you could do that would be to drill test holes.
That's what I was thinking too, and one test hole doesn't satisfy me.
Well, you take the existing information that you have from registered wells in the surrounding area, and that's what you base most all your information on. Is if you have existing wells, if you had four square miles or 10 square miles, and you had no houses there, like, well, someplace in the boondocks, in Noto County, or somewhere like that. So we've been down in the boondocks this past month, and we had down in Gage County, and we were having a little problem finding water. And we found out about a water witcher down in Kansas, and he came up, and we drilled where he said, and we found some water. It wasn't that great, but we found some water for a house. And it was so you just never know. But if you're in this area here, and you look at the surrounding registered wells, and you look at what the state has written in their records for the aquifer, that's all you can go by is the aquifer. You can't go by if somebody says, well, we're doing 5 gallons a minute or 10 gallons a minute. You look at the aquifer. If you've got 5 to 10, 15 feet of sand aquifer, sandstone, sand, gravel, and you're going to get a good well, good producing well, just because of that, the sand that's there.
I guess what we're talking about is the carrying capacity of the land in that part of Lancaster County. Carrying capacity is limited. We don't have any really reliable way to figure out what the carrying capacity is.
I don't know how much more you can go by except what you have for geology listed on all these wells. Look at how many wells are there here. There's 30 wells in this grid.
I know, I've looked at it.
And 7 of them are ag irrigation wells. So it means there's 23 wells that are house wells that are on this grid, and they all have a listed capacity of 5 gallons a minute or more, and 5 gallons a minute is only on, I think, 1. The rest of them are a lot higher than 5 or even 10. And the well we made, we tested it with the air system at 30 gallons a minute.
Was that well dug at the top of the ridge to the north?
Well, it's from where the well is, you can still go uphill from it to get to the very, very top of the ridge. But it's on pretty high. It's on the northwest corner of this development.
Yeah, I was out there, and I think I saw
on the high.
So white pipe sticking out of the ground.
That's it. Yeah. That's the one.
Okay, any further questions? I thank you, Mr. Mosier.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else here who would like to speak in a neutral capacity? Yes.
I wanted to call the county engineer up. I think she had to leave, but I think the county surveyor is here. There's been some questioning about Rock Creek Road and the railroad track and possibly a new state diversion. Ken, do you know anything about that? And you'll have to swear yet.
Ken Schroeder, County Engineering.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Pam would probably have the most information as far as what's planned for a diversion or anything around that intersection. I know that the traffic counts are low. There's no immediate plans to redo any of those county roads. There was some question about access. This ground is really cut up with a lot of natural ravines and things through that outlot, the farm ground, so it's going to have more farm accesses allowed than probably normal developments, just because the ease to get to those little pockets of farm ground. Some driveways are going to be removed when they're not needed, and they'll access through the interior roads. But again, it's the farm access is going to need to be maintained. We are asking for additional right-of-way to be dedicated, just like it would be on any development. The Rock Creek Road is developed on the north part of this, and I'm asking for another 10 feet of right-of-way be dedicated to fit the standard 50-foot that we asked for. Any improvements to that road we'd need to negotiate with the landowners to the south to acquire some additional right-of-way. The history of when it got rocked, I'd have to do some research to answer those questions.
But it is on the county maintenance system at
Yes.
this point, and
Yes, it
plans
is.
to be, even though maybe at first it was just rocked up to those driveways. And,
Yes.
And you do plan to maintain it?
Yes.
Thank you, Ken. Okay. All right. I think that, did you have a question? Yes.
Could we have the city attorney address some questions?
Sure, absolutely.
County attorney, sorry.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Brittany Barons, Deputy Lancaster County Attorney.
Brittany, this was brought to us because of the road issue, right?
The block length, the
Yeah.
waiver of the block length, that's correct.
Right. We've been talking a lot about water. Do we have the legal authority to take into account things like water, erosion, flooding issues, lagoons and all that in our decision-making? Or do we open ourselves up to liability and possible lawsuits?
What I can tell you with regard to the water rights and the issues that have been brought before both the Planning Commission and the County Board is that I think that the comment that was made by the Planning Commission just historically was that the County Board at some point made a decision from a public policy standpoint not to put water quality and quantity specifically in the code. So there's nothing specifically in the code with regard to those issues, but from a legal perspective, from a case law perspective, what I can tell you about the state of the law is that there is a cause of action with regard to domestic groundwater use, but it's between the landowners. There is not much case law in Nebraska, but there's enough case law to establish that with regard to domestic groundwater users, there is no priority or preference as it relates to a first in time or first in right type theory. That doesn't exist in Nebraska. The theory that exists is a reasonable use of the groundwater. So in the event that any of the landowners felt that another of the landowners was using the groundwater in excess of a reasonable and beneficial use, that the courts in the state of Nebraska have recognized a cause of action between landowners. There is some additional case law out there in Nebraska that does create a hierarchy or a priority and preference between a domestic user, an agricultural user, and then an industrial user. So as it relates to the irrigation well discussion, the case law in Nebraska creates a hierarchy between a domestic user and an ag irrigation well. Obviously, in this case, before the board, the issue is additional domestic uses. That's what the proposed CUP is presenting before you. And again, if there were a situation where one of the domestic users felt like a agricultural or industrial user was using in excess of a reasonable and beneficial use, the courts have recognized a cause of action. So those are, in my research, I'm not aware of any Eighth Circuit case, any Nebraska case that has been brought against a county board for approval of a special permit. The water law issues are between landowners.
So I just was trying to figure out what our exposure might be if we are supposed to be looking at this because of the road issue or the street issue. And
And back to that point, the reason that the special permit is before the board is because the Planning Commission couldn't take final action because a waiver was requested. Now, at this point in time that the special permit is before you, the entirety of the special permit is before the board. So not just the waiver, the entirety of the special permit.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, so you are correct in that you're taking action on the entirety of the special permit because of the waiver.
Okay, well, I think that what we will do, there has been a lot of testimony presented. I think that what we can do is to keep the hearing open. Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing that requires the board to take action at this time. Obviously, the board has a number of options. If you feel like you would like to keep the public hearing open to acquire additional testimony at a later date, you can choose to do that.
Okay.
You can choose to close the public hearing today and take an opportunity to let the information and testimony that you've heard today resonate. You are full within your authority to do that as well.
Percolate.
Okay.
Yes,
Let it percolate.
or percolate.
Great
Yes.
word of the day.
What I would like to do then probably is to ask the board what their wishes would be. Do you feel that you have enough information? Would you like to leave it open until next week, or would you like to close it with but I don't want to take any action today because I think that we've had a lot of discussion. What is the wish of the board? Yeah.
Well, I think, has everybody spoken that wanted to spoke and given their views? I think we had a good balance of those in favor, those opposed, and those in a neutral position. However, I think we need some time to digest this information. So I think if everybody's had a chance to speak, I think we could go ahead and close the public hearing, but I'd like to see us let the board have time to digest and maybe discuss this before we would direct one way or the other.
Well, this is exactly what I wanted to do, Larry.
Okay.
Okay.
Just so the board is aware, at some point in time, when the board is ready to make that determination, the board will need to direct a resolution to be prepared in accordance with the board's wishes.
And I don't think that we're ready to make a resolution right yet. So let me repeat it again. What would be the wish of the board? Would you want to close it, or would you want to let it remain open for one more week?
Well, if it remains open, that means we can accept formal testimony in the next week, or formal communication. I'm not quite sure what this means.
At any point in time, members of the public, citizens, could submit documentation with regard to this. If you were to leave the public hearing actually open, it would be on next week's agenda under public hearing, just as it is today, and you would again continue the public hearing at next week's meeting and be able to hear additional testimony next week. If you close it, people can submit documentation to you just the same as if it were open. The only difference would be it would be on next week's agenda as a public hearing, and people would be given an opportunity at next week's April 14th meeting to submit additional testimony at the meeting.
I don't see any reason to keep it open.
Okay, all right. Well, then what we'll do then is we will close the public hearing, and for anyone who would like to present additional information to the county commissioners, they can present additional documented information, and we will discuss this at our staff meeting on Thursday, and then we will make a resolution, a decision regarding the resolution on Tuesday. Okay? Is that the procedure then? You may as well just stay up.
Sorry.
Until we tell you to sit down.
At Thursday's meeting, you'll actually just, somebody will make a motion directing the county
Okay,
attorney's office
okay.
to prepare the resolution. The resolution itself will then be moved to a Tuesday meeting for formal action by the board.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, thank you, Brittany. Okay, Larry?
I think the thing that we need to do, if that's our decision, is direct our county administrative office to Thursday to put it on our staff meeting
Right,
so that we can
exactly.
discuss it.
Yeah. Okay. So, Carrie, you've got that? Okay, thank you. Okay, so the public hearings are now closed, and Mr. Clerk, will you go on to item 4?
Next is new business. 4A is a recommendation from the Personnel Policy Board to create the classification of pre-adjudication specialist.
And thank you for your patience.
Good afternoon, Doug McDaniel, Human Resources. The next several pieces of new business relate to the merger of two departments. And I believe the county board is familiar with the process and the merger here. The first is this pre-adjudication specialist position. We have worked with the Director of Human Services. The person hired in this classification will work with the Director coordinating the pre-adjudication community services program. This work is currently being done by a temporary in the position, and the county is looking to make it a full-time permanent position. So we're unable to find market data for this specific classification. We can't find it in the marketplace to give good direction. So we look to an existing position within the county, and that with duties that are similar. The Community Corrections Coordinator is in the adult side of the work, and that's in a C-15. That position performs supervision and supervisory management responsibilities. So we've chosen a C-13 for this classification because at this time it will not be supervising anyone. So the request is to create the position of pre-adjudication specialist at a C-13.
Yes.
Just for clarification, what is the pay scale for a C-13?
C-13 starts at $46,067.84, and it maxes out at $59,011.68.
Is this the best way to deal with the personnel issue? I mean, we're currently performing this task, right?
Yes, with a temporary position.
How do we do this prior to the temporary being hired?
I will have to probably refer to the director, Sarah Hoyle, to answer the question. She is here.
Yeah.
Hello. We
Sarah Hoyle, yes.
Sarah Hoyle, Director of Human Services. We previously did this position through a contract with probation, and then as a result of legislative change in the juvenile code, this position then became the county's responsibility. So the county then took this position and the funding associated with that from probation and started the pre-adjudication program.
Okay.
And all of this funding comes from community aid. It's not county money, it's community aid funding to fund this position.
Larry?
Procedural question for Mr. McDaniels. And so we've heard your recommendation, and then at this point for procedure, if that's what we wish to do, we would direct you to create the classification and start the process?
That's correct. We would take a requisition, we would post the position, source candidates, and present a qualified list then to Ms. Hoyle to interview and select.
I would so move that we proceed in that fashion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the recommendation of the Personnel Policy Board for this, to create this new classification. Is there any discussion? Yes, Larry?
I've been kind of, my whole history is not creating more positions or FTEs for Lancaster County. However, I think Sarah has a very good explanation. When it was a contract position and now with a change in the law, we had to make some very big changes last year when the legislature in the last days told us we had to create 42 more offices and staff them. So sometimes things are out of our control. I'm not trying to grow Lancaster County government, but this is a very important function. And certainly Sarah and her office have shown us that it is for the benefit of all of our citizens and particularly our youth. So I will support creating this additional FTE.
Any further discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Wilchin?
Yes.
Avery?
Yes.
Hudgens?
Yes.
Amundson?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. B is a recommendation from the Personnel Policy Board to revise the classification and change the pay grade for the Juvenile Justice Coordinator.
This request is to revise and lower the pay grade of the Juvenile Justice Coordinator position. Classification is currently vacant. The previous incumbent is now the Director of Human Services. Sarah Hoyle was promoted into the Director position, leaving her previous position vacant. She has revised the duties of that position, taking on some of the responsibilities herself as the Director, so therefore lowering the pay grade of that position.
And what would be that pay, what is the level?
Excuse me, that pay grade and change in duties from a C18 to a C16. Mr. Wilchin, C16 is $51,228 to $63,617. $65,617, pardon me.
65. Okay. Larry?
I would move approval of this recommendation. I think the new director is very responsible in taking a look. She evidently feels that this is the amount of help that she needs and can attract a good person at this level. I think that's a very responsible course of action, and so I would move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve this classification and change in pay grade. Is there any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Wilchin?
Yes.
Hudgens?
Yes.
Avery?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. C is a recommendation from the Personnel Policy Board to revise the classification, class title, and pay grade of the General Assistance Deputy Director.
Again, going back in history, as we merged these two departments, Veteran Affairs General Assistance had a deputy director. Now, as we merged these departments, that request has been to move that deputy director, eliminate that position of the deputy director for general assistance, and create a general assistance officer position. So therefore, we move it from an appointed position in the M pay grade, MSS pay grade, to the classified service in a C16 pay grade is our recommendation.
How much money are we talking about here? Is it an increase over what we've been spending, a decrease, about the same?
It depends on where they hire the new position at, Mr. Avery. The current incumbent is at $53,857, so almost $54,000, $53,800. The C16 is a minimum of $51,228 to a maximum of $65,617.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. Please call the roll.
I don't have a motion yet.
Oh, we don't have a motion. I'm sorry.
Or a second.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I would hope that if we approve this, that we don't spend more than we currently are.
Understood.
Nodding her head. So I move that we approve.
I'd second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the recommendation to revise this classification of the General Assistance Deputy Director. Any further questions or comments? Discussion? Please call the roll.
Hudgens?
Yes.
Avery?
Yes.
Wilchin?
Yes.
Amundson?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. 4D is a recommendation from the Personnel Policy Board to revise the classification of Equipment Operator 2.
Move approval.
Second.
It's
This is more housekeeping for the board's purposes. We discovered upon reviewing this that this classification did not require a Nebraska driver's license. We felt that was important to put that into the class description.
It has no budgetary implications.
No, sir.
Okay. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Hudgens?
Yes.
Avery?
Yes.
Wilchin?
Yes.
Amundson?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. E is a lease termination agreement with Goodwill Industries serving Southeast Nebraska, Inc.
I'd move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the lease termination agreement with Goodwill Industries. Is there any discussion? Yes.
I would just say that we did cover this at a Thursday staff meeting, and it's a transfer of property that needed to be cleaned up that hadn't been filed, so it's pretty much housekeeping, but we did have sufficient briefing on this Thursday.
Yeah, and this is just formality. This is something that we're not terminating our agreement with Goodwill Industries. This is just a matter for just formality.
Okay.
And certainly our relationship with Goodwill Industries has been one that's been very appropriate over the years. We just, title transfer needs to be cleaned up.
And this item is related to the next one as well?
All of them.
The next two.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve this. Is there, please call the roll.
Avery?
Yes.
Wilchin?
Yes.
Hudgens?
Yes.
Amundson?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. F is a quitclaim deed from Lancaster County to Goodwill Industries serving Southeast Nebraska, Inc. for lots 6 and 7, Block 1, Cornhusker Industrial Plaza, Lincoln, Lancaster County, Nebraska.
I would move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the quitclaim deed. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Wilchin?
Yes.
Hudgens?
Yes.
Avery?
Yes.
Amundson?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. G is general assignment and bill of sale from Lancaster County to Goodwill Industries serving Southeast Nebraska, Inc.
I would move approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the general assignment and bill of sale. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Avery?
Yes.
Hudgens?
Yes.
Wilchin?
Yes.
Amundson?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. 4H is a grant contract with Family Violence Council to provide funding in the amount of $70,958 for improved legal advocacy relating to protection orders and immigrants in Lancaster County project. Term of the contract is October 1st, 2014 to September 30th, 2017.
And move approval.
Are we talking about grant funds here?
These are grant funds, yes.
Yeah. I will second.
Moved and seconded that we approve this grant contract for $71,000 roughly, $70,958.
We have to abstain.
You will have to abstain?
Yeah, I just want to make a point that this is a federal contract, so I would have to abstain
Okay.
to avoid the appearance of conflict of interest.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Hudgens?
Yes.
Wilchin?
Abstain.
Avery?
Yes.
Amundson?
Yes.
Motion carries 3 yes, 1 abstention. I is a grant contract with Lancaster Prevention Coalition to provide funding of $13,783 to provide services to reduce underage drinking in Lancaster County. Term of the contract is April 1st, 2015 to March 31st, 2016.
I would move approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve this grant contract. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Avery?
Yes.
Wilchin?
Yes.
Hudgens?
Yes.
Amundson?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. J is utility permit number 1265 for Windstream Nebraska, Inc. to perform cable relocation associated with box culvert M102 construction on West Adams Street east and northwest 84th Street.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the utility permit. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Avery?
Yes.
Hudgens?
Yes.
Wilchin?
Yes.
Amundson?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. K K is utility permit number 1266 for Windstream Nebraska, Inc. to perform cable relocation associated with culvert Q318 construction on Pioneer Boulevard east of South 138th Street.
Move approval. Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the utility permit. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. 4L is utility permit number 1267 for Windstream Nebraska, Inc. to perform cable relocation associated with culvert Q7 construction on Pioneer Boulevard east of South 120th Street.
Move approval.
Second.
It's moved and seconded that we approve the utility permit. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. M is utility permit number 1268 for Windstream Nebraska, Inc. to perform cable relocation associated with culvert Q4 constructed on South 120th Street north of Pioneer Boulevard.
Move approval. Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the utility permit. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. N is utility permit number 1269 for Windstream Nebraska, Inc. to perform cable replacement on Panama Road in the unincorporated village of Holland.
Move approval. Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the utility permit. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Avery,
Yes.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. 4O is an interlocal agreement between the City of Lincoln on behalf of the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department and Lancaster County on behalf of the Lancaster County Corrections Community Service Program to conduct roadside litter pickup along county roads by inmates. The city will pay the county based on $50 per mile of roadside litter pickup, not to exceed $7,000 for the period of May 1st, 2015 to December 31st, 2015. Depending on available funding, the parties may agree in writing to provide an additional $3,500 in funding.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
With
Yeah.
comment.
Yes.
This is an excellent program. I want to thank Director Mike Thurber of Corrections for working with this program. One only had to look between the airport and downtown Lincoln with the litter and the chain link fence there. Pick this up. They go out and pick up on county roads. We've had stools, mattresses, and kind of things that have been left. So it's a good program. We're glad that the Corrections Department's willing to help out. Plus, we've also got a lot of volunteers that clean a mile and pick it up. But without that, the county wouldn't look as nice as it is, but it's a continual job.
You're absolutely right there, Larry. Okay, please call the roll.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. P is an agreement with the Board of Regents on behalf of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln to conduct tractor safety training on April 29, 2015 for the Lancaster County Department of Corrections. The county will pay $70 per participant for the training.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the agreement with the Board of Regents. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Q is an agreement between the Bridge Behavioral Health for substance abuse evaluations and abuse education classes for inmates in the custody of the Lancaster County Jail. The county will pay $150 per evaluation for a maximum of 3 evaluations per month and $100 per substance abuse education class. Term of the contract is March 1st, 2015 to February 28th, 2017.
Is this already budgeted?
I'm not sure.
Sarah would probably be
Sarah
the one
would
to
be
answer
the
that.
person to know
Gwen,
that.
would you know?
Gwen Thorpe, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer. This is for adults. Sarah would be involved with the juveniles. I will go check and see what I
Okay,
can
we
find
can
out.
just hold this for right now. Okay, let's move on then to the next.
R is an amendment to County Contract C-14-001 94 with Heartland Big Brothers Big Sisters for implementation of a juvenile offender reentry program. The amendment extends the grant term and increases the contract amount by $11,030 for the extension period.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve this amendment to the county contract with Heartland Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Is there any discussion? Yes.
Madam Chair, again, this is a federal grant, so I will be abstaining.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Wilchin,
Abstain.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 3 yes, 1 abstention. S is an amendment to County Contract C-11-169 with Dell Marketing LP for computer equipment, peripherals, and related services. The amendment renews Lancaster County and the Public Building Commission as parties to the contract.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve this amendment to the county contract. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. T is an amendment to County Contract C-11-94 with Hewlett-Packard Company for computer equipment, peripherals, and related services. The amendment removes Lancaster County and the Public Building Commission as parties to the contract.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve this amendment to the county contract. Any discussion?
I guess I'm curious as to why we're removing Lancaster County and the Building Commission.
Brittany, can you answer that?
Brittany Barons, Deputy Lancaster County Attorney. The County and Public Building Commission will no longer be purchasing off these contracts. They'll go back out for bid. So it's just an extension for a few months before we rebid it. And the County and Public Building Commission won't need any items off of the contract during that period of time. So in order for us not to have to deal in all of the rest of the paperwork, we'll just remove ourselves from the contract for the remainder of the term.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Next is number 5, consent items. Receive and place on file the following reports for March 2015, Clerk of the District Court, County Clerk, Records and Information, Lancaster County Assessor Register of Deeds.
Would move approval.
Oh, there's more.
We got
There's
more
more
here,
on the
Todd.
next page.
Oh, sorry.
Right-of-way contracts for Diane Matzner, North 56th Street and the Little Salt Road in the amount of $30. The next one, contract has been held per county engineer. B3 would be Robert and Gloria Broccoli, North 56th Street and Little Salt Road in the amount of $70.
I would move approval of the consent items.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the consent items.
Just,
Okay.
Pam had asked me that we pull item 2. I don't know if that makes a difference between B2, if it's held or pulled, but she said to just pull item B2.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. Okay, please call the roll.
Avery,
Yes.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Hudkins,
yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Next is number 6, public comment. Those wishing to speak on items relating to county business, non-agenda, may do so at this time.
Well, thank you for your patience.
We learned a lot about wells today. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Kobe Mack. I'm the president of the Lincoln Independent Business Association. Also with me today is Ann Post. She is our legal counsel. We're here on behalf of LIBA to ask the board to reconsider a tentative opposition to LB 132.
So currently, a loophole in the Joint Public Agency Act allows government agencies to use a JPA to circumvent the voters and issue bonds, effectively raising taxes. LB 132, which we are asking you to reconsider today, closes that loophole. Reconsider your tentative opposition to. Last Thursday, this board discussed opposing LB 132. I am here today to explain the unintended and easily manipulated loophole in the JPA Act, how LB 132 closes that loophole, and that the only obstacle that this bill imposes is the obstacles of responsible and accountable government. So first, let's start with some history. The Joint Public Agency Act was passed in 1999 with the goal of allowing government agencies to work together to better use their powers and resources, to achieve efficiencies, to do more for Nebraskans with the resources they had. The Act does this by allowing agencies at any level of government to, by contract, create a new government subdivision called a Joint Public Agency, or a JPA. Now, generally, the JPA Act gives JPAs the same powers and privileges as their member agencies bring to the JPA. It flows through from that agency to the JPA. The exception is when it comes to bonding. The JPA Act actually gives JPAs more authority to bond than their member agencies. So let me explain this with an example. Let's say that a city decides it wants to build a swimming pool. It might choose to do this by issuing general obligation bonds. And to do that, they'd have to go to a public vote to approve those bonds. If we say instead that a school district wants to build a swimming pool, again, they could do that by issuing general obligation bonds, bonds paid by property taxes, and they'd have to go to a vote. But if those entities decide they want to skip the vote, they can come together, create a JPA, and issue the same bonds, general obligation bonds, paid by the same property taxes, and not have to go to a vote. LB 132 closes this loophole by requiring that any time a JPA issues a bond paid by a property tax, it must receive voter approval. In other words, the citizens who are going to pay off those bonds for the next 20 or 30 years get to approve those bonds. This bill does not take away any of Lancaster County's authority to issue bonds. It doesn't inhibit any worthy projects any more than responsible government should. It does not prevent government agencies from working together in any way, and the only incentive it eliminates is the incentive to use a JPA to circumvent a public vote. So though the technicalities of bonding and the JPA Act can be complicated, the policies behind this bill are very, very simple. Government agencies should not be able to use a JPA to circumvent a public vote. This is why LIBA supports this bill, and this is why we're here today to ask you to reconsider opposing closing of this loophole. So with that, we'd be happy to take questions.
We've discussed the issue of refinancing. Are we going to need an amendment to this bill in order to make sure we can refinance without having to go to a vote? Existing bonds?
Absolutely. We are more than willing to go down with and visit with Senator Ebke and ask her to place an amendment on this bill so that it's very, very clear that you have the ability to refinance without going to a vote of the public a second time.
This bill did get a priority from the government committee?
Yes.
Correct? So we'll have to include them in the discussion of the amendment.
Yes.
Correct.
Well, that was my question. As it's currently drafted now, it would prohibit the refinancing of JPA bonds?
It's not clear that it would prohibit that, but we can understand the wish to make it expressly clear that it doesn't prohibit it, to have that written out specifically in statute. So it's 100% clear. If you're going to save money by refinancing, you should do it.
Well, that would, surprise me if LIBA wouldn't find a way to help us save money, because you've always been very astute in the past. One of the things that the reason we considered a JPA for the new jail is that actually the citizens of Lancaster County got a reduced interest rate because we took the higher bond rating of the city, and so when they became part of the JPA and the county, the citizens of Lancaster County actually enjoyed a lower interest rate because we combined both agencies and were able to get a better bond rating. If LB 132 were put into place and we created a JPA with the city to build a jail like we did, would both bodies have to vote on it?
To create the JPA?
Mm-hmm. Or to create a project within a JPA?
If the tax levy is coming from both bodies, yes, it would be one election, but both bodies would have to vote on it.
And both bodies would have to be a majority?
Yes.
And Commissioner, I will say that we agree with what you just said about how using a JPA saved funding. And in fact, we are not opposed to the creation of JPAs. We are not opposed to JPAs themselves. We have several that have been very successful. We're simply asking that the legislature close a loophole here. The committee has made it a priority designation at the legislature, and we're just asking that this body not oppose it.
And this bill would also apply to school districts and other subdivisions, not just county and city government.
Now, the bill applies to JPAs, so it would apply to any time that any government agency, from federal government down to an ESU, entered into a JPA.
Yes, Larry, Bill.
I wanted to say that I appreciate your attention to the issue of accountability and openness in government. I've supported that all my career, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? We'd be happy to try and answer them.
When will you have a copy of the proposed amendment which would clarify that we could refinance without a vote of the people?
We'd be happy to work with the county board's council or the official lobbyist council, whoever it is, that would be responsible for making sure that the county interests are represented. We'd be happy to work with him and get that as soon as possible.
We did have a question on Friday when we were talking about that 5.2 cents. How does this law impact that 5.2 cents levy that the county does have the authority over?
It doesn't affect the county's authority to levy or to issue any type of bonds at all. The county still has every ounce of authority to issue bonds that it would have had before this bill. The only thing it affects is a JPA's authority to issue bonds.
In other words, you have the authority to do bonding now, and if you entered into a JPA and you as a body still wanted to do your own bonding, you have the ability to do that. And you can take those bond funds and you can give them to whomever you want to. If you want to give them to LPS, you can. If you want to give those bond funds to the JPA, you can. What this is saying is when the two groups enter into an arrangement of a JPA together, that if together you want to issue bonds that have then that separate line item authority on your property taxes as the JPA, that you would have to go to a vote of the people. But otherwise, you still have, this does not take away your authority.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Egan, did you have a question or comment?
If they're finished.
Are you finished?
A caveat to that.
I have a question.
You have a question?
Do you know of any situations currently existing where JPAs have issued bonds without a vote of the people?
Yes, there are two of them.
Well, there are several. There's actually...
I meant in Lincoln. But.
Okay, in Lincoln. There's... I have to look at my list. Let's see. There's 6 JPAs in the state of Nebraska. There are 2 that have not issued bonds without a vote.
Oh, and what are they?
There is the Boone County Development Agency that, to my knowledge, has not issued bonds. The Lancaster County Fairgrounds Joint Public Agency, the Lancaster County Correctional Facility Joint Public Agency, the West Haymarket Joint Public Agency, the Exeter Milligan School Facilities Joint Public Agency, and that one has not issued bonds. They intended to, but after public input, decided not to. And the Cedar Bluffs Recreational Facilities Joint Public Agency.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
6 JPAs. Harry?
Thank you. Kerry Egan, Chief Administrative Officer for the board. The 2 concerns that were highlighted to the board last Thursday were the refinancing of bonds with the amendment that had been proposed for 132, that it's very unclear about whether you'd have to go to a vote of the people to refinance. It sounds to me like LEBA is perfectly willing to work with that, and that's not the intent of their bill. The second problem that we identified was the statute 23-120 subsection B2 or 2B, that 5.2 cents that Larry referenced for the corrections JPA. We took a portion of that 5.2 cents and lent that to the JPA. That does not require a vote, so we can use it to 5.2 cents with a 20-year amortization period that's been in statute forever. With this amendment, you could no longer do that. So the benefit that you would have had was the lower bond rate with the city, but how we financed that was the lending of the authority to the JPA and getting the lower bond rate after the election had failed, which would have actually been the lowest bond rate if that had been approved, but that was rejected. You had to build the jail, you had no choice. So you used the second option, which was the second best option, was using the 5.2 cents, lending that to the JPA. I think there are probably some issues, and without a legal opinion or legal request, to take money and lend it to another authority without a legal relationship may be problematic. I wouldn't make that blanket statement without researching it. So that is another concern that was identified. The board never did take a formal position against this bill and did not last Thursday. They expressed these two concerns, and I think that that's where it is right now.
But the lobbyists did recommend that we oppose.
Well, they had it on their list as opposed. When I went back and looked at our history, what we discussed it on January 29th, which I think was the day of the hearing on LB 132. We identified a list of potential confusions that Mike Rogers, bond counsel, had identified. The board, rather than jump in and take a position at that point and increase our already lengthy agenda, we just said let the city handle it, and we'll go from there. So the board did not take a formal position at that meeting and did not take a formal position last Thursday, but these two concerns were brought to the board's attention. I think that's what we're working with now, not opposing the bill or opposing the concept of the bill, but making sure that we don't get these unintended consequences wrapped in. And I don't know if the 5.2 cents is unintended or not, but that's authority that the board would lose with this amendment.
Well, I guess, Ann, do you have a response?
I would just like to address that. Thank you for allowing me to. I just want to clarify that right now, as the law stands, the county does have independent county authority to do 5.2 cents of bonding without going to a vote. That JPA's authority to bond is entirely separate from that. Bonds are the debt only of the JPA, not of the city and the county. And once any taxing authority is given to a JPA, it can bond that. It doesn't matter what the limit are or the length of time. Like that 5.2 cents for the county, there are those limitations on it. So the situation as it currently stands is when any agency gives taxing authority to a JPA for the purpose of bonding, there's no limits on the bonds that can be issued with or without a public vote. This regulation only applies to JPA bonding. So the county doesn't lose any authority that it currently has, and it's only JPAs that are limited. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
Is this another way of just hiding money so the taxpayer?
Can you come up and...
Yeah, can you come up, and then would you have, Ann? You may be asked to respond.
My name's Don Olson. Is this another way for the taxpayers won't be aware of what's happening with all the bond funding, so you can get more bond funding? Because this is under the radar?
Actually, no. With the requirement of a public vote, it would be much more transparent. The public would have much more of an influence in when these bonds can be issued and when a JPA can have the authority to issue these bonds.
Yeah, but the JPA, you're saying that the people can do it without the public, correct?
I don't understand that question.
Okay, well, what I understood is that the JPA, is that correct? JPAs?
JPA is what it's called.
You said that the people here can just fund it anytime they want to refinance.
No.
No. The idea would be that first what this bill requires is that there is a public vote taken anytime that a bonds are issued, bonds paid by property taxes. So there has to be that public vote. The request from the county was that there be an amendment so that anytime those bonds are refinanced. So it's only refinancing bonds that have already been approved by a public vote. So that would be in the case where, like right now, you have much lower interest rates than there might have been when bonds were initially issued. And so that would be where the JPA would want to take advantage of those lower interest rates to save on some of their payments for those bonds. And that's the request of where refinancing bonds could be issued without a public vote.
Larry?
And I just want to clarify something you just said. You said that refinancing of bonds which were previously approved by a public vote. In the case of the corrections facility, they weren't approved by a public vote. So would you be willing to state that existing issues be able to be refinanced without a public vote?
I think LIBA's interest would be that any time a public agency can save money by refinancing bonds, we would be in favor of that.
Okay, well, that just
Okay.
wasn't what was just stated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your public comment. Let's continue.
Next is number 7, announcements. The Lancaster County Board of Commissioners will hold a staff meeting on Thursday, April 9th, 2015 at 8:30 a.m. in the Bill Luxford studio of the County City Building. The Lancaster County Board of Commissioners will hold their next regular meeting on Tuesday, April 14th, 2015 at 10:30 a.m. in room 112 of the County City Building with the Board of Equalization immediately following. The Lancaster County Board of Commissioners will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, April 14th, 2015 at 10:30 a.m. in room 112 of the County City Building regarding a request from Lancaster County Public Rural Transit for financial assistance from the Federal Transit Administration pursuant to the Federal Transit Act. County Commissioners can be reached at 402-441-7447 or commish@lancaster.ne.gov.
Okay, and Gwen, did you find out about Q?
I did. This is funded by our prevention funds. It's out of Keno prevention funding. So the contract doesn't explicitly state that, but Dennis and I talked about it, and that's where the money's from.
Okay,
That helps.
great, thank you.
With that explanation, I'd move approval of item Q.
Second.
Move decided that we approve the agreement between the Bridge Behavioral Health and for substance abuse evaluations. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. And on announcements 7E, the Lancaster County Board of Commissioners meeting is broadcast live. It is rebroadcast on Tuesday and Saturday on 5 City TV, Cable Channel 5. In addition, the meeting may be viewed on the internet at lancaster.ne.gov under 5 City TV, video on demand, or 5 City TV on YouTube.
Move adjournment.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn. Please call the roll.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Amundson.
Okay, the County Board of Commissioners meeting is adjourned. And at this point in time, we will now open the County Board of Equalization.
Copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is located on the wall at the rear of the hearing room. Additionally, a copy of all written material to be discussed at today's open meeting is available from the county clerk staff. The material can also be viewed on the county's website at lancaster.ne.gov. Also in attendance this morning is Scott Gaines from the County Assessor's Office. Agenda item 1 are minutes. Approve the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held on Tuesday, March 31st, 2015.
I would move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the minutes. Any corrections or additions? Please call the roll.
Avery,
Yes.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Number 2 are additions and deductions to the tax assessment rolls.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the additions and the deductions to the tax assessment rolls. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Hudkins,
Yes.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Next is a public hearing, motor vehicle tax exemption applications for Christian Church in Nebraska and Sisters of Mary, Queen of Mercy.
Okay, we will open the public hearing for these motor vehicle tax exemption applications. Anyone in favor of these exemptions? please come forward. Anyone opposed to? Anyone in a neutral position? Okay, seeing none, we close the public hearing.
I would move approval.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve these applications. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Hudkins.
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Is number 4, public comment. Those wishing to speak on items relating to County Board of Equalization business not on agenda may do so at this time.
Anyone? Okay, seeing none, no one come forward.
I would move adjournment.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn. Please call the roll.
Wilchin,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Hudkins.
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion
Boy, that wore me out.